I wanted to just show you this algorithm challenge because I've already done challenge 33 and realised that all of the skills and kind of techniques that you use for 31 are almost the same. So basically this one's giving you a little bit more of an example of the input that you could do and the actual outputs when it's finished, but if you read through the actual bit at the top, it's very similar type of program. So I'm going to just copy this in case I need any of the program in a minute. Essentially what it's saying is the user will provide a series of numbers representing the weight in grams of individual fruits. The weights are always whole positive numbers. The number of weights to be entered will also be provided by the user. The solution shall calculate and report the mean weight of the fruit to 2 decimal places. 2 examples of executing the solution are shown below. So the main bulk of this program is going to be very similar to challenge 31. If we do the same process, we need to find the input first. So it says the user will provide a series of numbers representing the weight in grams of individual fruits. So again, it's going to be something like fruit weight equals, and it says whole positive numbers, so we know that it's going to be integers again. Then it says enter the weight of the fruit and 2 brackets to end. It does say that the number of weights to be entered will also be provided by the user. So we could put number of fruits equals int input. It's an integer because you can't have half a fruit. Well, you can, but you're not going to put the weight of half a fruit in. So number of fruits, enter the number of fruits. Okay. Now what we need to do, similar to before, this line of code needs to happen over and over again. And we know how many times by how many fruits they enter. So we know it's a count controlled loop. And we can put for fruit in range. And we know that the range is going to be what they enter. So number of fruits. Then obviously this needs to be indented just like before. So now what we've got is a for loop that's going to loop over however many times you type in for number of fruits. So you could type in 5 fruits. This line of code will repeat 5 times. Just like before, we need to keep adding the weights to a total. So we could put total weight, set it as an integer, and put it as 0. Then what we could do is the next line of code needs to add it all to a total. So if we put total weight plus equals fruit weight, what that will do is whatever the weight of fruit you enter is going to get added in to total weight. And it's going to repeat that and repeat it and repeat it and repeat it until you have finished the amount of times that the loop is meant to run, which will be entered by the user. Okay, then we need to calculate the average. So once that loop is completed, we should have a value for total weight. Now it says the mean average. So to calculate the average, we're going to need a variable we could call average equals. We know that average is calculated by the total weight divided by the number of fruits and then it says to calculate it 2 decimal places and we need to print it out. So doesn't actually tell us the specific output, but we can see by the little picture at the bottom that it says average weight is, and then a colon. Then what we've got to do is to print out a little bit of a string. You put a comma in and then the variable that you want to output. So that's now going to print out this message followed by the value of average, which should be calculated by this little bit. So input wise, we've created a variable at the start and set it to 0. We've created a variable called number of fruits and asked the user to input it. We've started a for loop and we want to repeat this loop however many times there are numbers of fruits. So for example 5, this value here would be 5 and it'll do these lines of code 5 times. It's going to ask you to enter the weight of a fruit and add it to a total, which is 0 at the start. Then add the next one and add the next one, the next one, next one, next one. And then when you've got that, we can calculate the average. The only bit missing is the 2 decimal places, but let's just test and see that it works first. Save this as 31. Oh, I've just saved over my other one, never mind. Enter the number of fruits, so we'll use 5 like I said before. Enter the weight of the fruit, we'll put like 35 grams, 46 grams, 52 grams, 46, 34, and it calculates the average weight for us. It's automatically put it as 1 decimal place, so we're going to try and figure out how to do it as 2 in a minute. Let's just do some of the basic things to improve this program. So we'll put the n in inside the speech marks so that we get a nice new line to write on. And another thing that you could do is a little bit of basic validation just to make sure they type in the right thing. So enter the weight of the fruit. It says in grams, so we're going to put in grams just to make sure they type it in grams and not kilograms or pounds or something like that. So decimal places. So at this point in the program, everything is working. You know everything's okay. The only bit you've got missing is the 2 decimal places. So if this was like a 6-mark question, you might lose a mark. You might get away with it and get all the marks because you've just missed one tiny thing. Now, the complicated part here is the function at the bottom, but what we could do as a way of improving it, first of all, is we could cast the calculation of this into a float, and that allows us to do a little bit more with this particular value. Then what we can do is round up this particular function. So before we go any further, let's make sure it works. We'll put, I don't know, 5 fruits, and we'll just type some random numbers in. And we can see that the program's still working, but we haven't got it to 2 decimal places yet. So we need to round up this particular thing. So we're going to use the round function. We're going to round up the average to 2 decimal places. And the problem now is we've got 1 open bracket, 2 open brackets, 3 open brackets, and only 1 close. So we need to put 2 more closes in. So it's going to round up average to 2 decimal places, and hopefully this works. So let's enter number 3 to 5 again, type loads of random numbers in, and it hasn't worked. Great. Okay, so I had to actually look this up because the round function doesn't seem to be working, which I've definitely used in the past and it did, but in this particular case what we're doing is this format technique. So this particular little string dot format function basically takes whatever you put in brackets and it applies this rule to the formatting. So what that does is it does 2 decimal places basically, and I looked it up in the Python index. So that now makes the program work perfectly, and we can just test it to make sure. So if we add 5 fruits again, put some random numbers in, and there we go, it's in 2 decimal places, even though it could potentially be as 1 because it's just 0.4. It's added the 0 in anyway. So that's the program, and if you look at that in comparison to what we did before with the other program, we started off with a counter, we asked for an input, we used that input to decide how many loops we were going to do, and then we asked the user for something and we added it to the counter. This time we worked out an average instead of doing an if statement, and then we print out the average as 2 decimal places. So this one is actually easier than the one before, but that is now challenge 31 completed.